So, welcome, David. We greatly appreciate your leadership. As always, we begin all things by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We also acknowledge all our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So please, David, introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your remarkable work.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Victor, and thanks for that beautiful acknowledgement. That's great. I'm David O'Leary. I am a founder of Kind Wealth and principal at Kind Wealth, and I'm building out that as a wealth advisory practice, working with high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals and families, providing a family office service. So working with them to create a wealth strategy and work with their other professionals in their lives to ensure that their money does what they want it to do for them and accomplish all their goals, but with a particular focus on how do we get people to think more strategically about the impact that they can have with their wealth in a variety of different facets. So whether that's how they spend, how they save and invest, or how they give money away. And my background just before that, very quickly, was I spent a few years running the impact investing arm of World Vision Canada. So I'll leave that intro at that.
Thank you so much for your leadership. As always, we really appreciate you. In our last conversation, you made insightful points. You spoke about creating a sense of community amongst your clients. What inspires you most about your work right now?
Yeah, it's really so. I'm very interested in the aspects of creating a community amongst the clients. I think that the idea of making a positive impact with your wealth can be greatly enhanced if we do it in a communal sense and work together with others, and whether that's learning from their experiences and insights that they've gained, maybe because they've been doing impact investing for longer and you've got a newer client who gets to hear and learn from somebody else who's done it, not just from their advisor who's telling them about it, but a client who's actually done it before and had that experience. But also for inspiration about what else is out there and what's possible, and hearing and meeting other people in the ecosystem. When I learned about it, it took me time to get involved and make connections in the ecosystem. And as you do, you just start to feel more part of a community. You get inspiration, encouragement, and support. And so that is one aspect I'm really excited about. And the other aspect is helping people understand their own money mindset, money attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. There's this idea in finance, I think, that I grew up with, certainly, that your money decisions should be unemotional and thoughtful, and just everything's sort of robotic. It's a math exercise, and there's no room. Don't get emotional about your money. And I think that's just a really unhelpful, quite frankly, a harmful view of money. Money is highly emotional. It's tied up in our hopes and fears and dreams, and a lot of us, I think, over time, especially growing up, sometimes can run into, I think, some harmful views, and the way they relate with money can sometimes be harmful and even detrimental to themselves. And so I'm very interested in exploring that with our clients and helping them unpack and uncover their own money. We call them money scripts, these sort of stories we tell ourselves about money that may not be true or may not be helpful.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for your candor. So that's a perfect segue to my next question. What challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the strategies you use to overcome them?
Yeah, a lot of challenges. I mean, we're so from, I think, two major aspects. One is what we're trying to build out is uses a very different model than the rest of the investment and wealth advisory industry. So the industry is really built upon, if you manage clients' investments for them, you typically would take some percentage of their investments as a fee for for providing advice. And what often happens, it creates some conflicts of interest. So if your client has desires to give away their money and you get paid by how much they invest with you, you don't have a whole lot of financial incentive to help them give away their money effectively. You really want to encourage them to keep investing more. That's one really pronounced example. So we pioneering a different model where, we don't manage our client assets and we are paid for the advice that we provide. And that provides some more independence so that no matter, what we tell them to do with their money, we're not going to make more or less because of it. The clients can feel sure that, like, hey, they're giving us their advice. It's not because they're going to make more money. It's because they think it's in our best interest. But anytime you kind of have a new approach and a new model, you've got to create awareness about it. People have to get familiar and comfortable with it. And so that's a bit of a challenge to try to fly in the face of the way the rest of the industry, works. And then the other aspect, I think, is this idea of reducing the talk action gap for, I'm talking about wanting to make an impact with my investments, but how much have I actually, directed dollars, whether again, that's giving money away or making investments with impact investments. And that reducing that talk action gap is challenging, and partly why we talked about the community aspect, I think, can be helpful for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your virtual family office and just your perspective on the future of impact investing in Canada. Your background working at World Vision, Canada, and the impact investing portfolio. I'd love your insights because, as you know, we have the social finance fund that's just been launched. We have a lot of fund managers in the ecosystem, and there's emerging fund managers. So I'd love to hear your insights on what does the future of impact investing look like in Canada?
It's a great question. Will share best I can. I certainly don't have a crystal ball, but I think that um, there's still a lot of where we've seen the most traction for people who are willing to make an impact investment. I still think that it comes from a place of, I'll start with some of my philanthropic dollars. This is money I would have been giving away anyway. And so if the investment doesn't pay the type of rate of return that I might otherwise be hoping for from an investment, and or doesn't work out, I will consider it a donation. And so, no problem. And I don't think that's a bad place to start. It certainly is very reasonable, but it's not where we want to be, right? We don't want to be cannibalizing philanthropic dollars. We will certainly want to encourage people to give more and more away. And I think there's the harmful notion. I'm hoping that this is starting to go away in impact investing circles, that impact investing is superior to philanthropy and will replace it one day. I think that it's suitable. What I think the magic of it is that it allows us to not use philanthropic dollars for things that don't require philanthropy, right? So I think about, hey, if we're interested in creating good jobs, and stimulating small business growth, investments are a great way to do that. Whereas if we're talking about disaster relief, setting up an investment opportunity is not at all suitable. We need relief money, as soon as possible. And so this idea of how do we think more strategically about, I have certain dollars to use, and which dollars are best directed for what purpose and cause is where I'd like to get. But I still think we're very focused on, hey, I'm going to use my philanthropic dollars as experimental money for impact investing. And I haven't seen a whole lot of people get much beyond that just yet. And so I'm hopeful that we can get into these conversations with our clients, help them understand that different dollars can be directed more beneficially to different purposes so that they are more strategic about that. And so that's part of, I think, the challenge. I hope that that's the direction we're heading. I think it's just, unfortunately, going to be a long journey. And I'll just quickly say, I kind of draw parallels from, if we looked at the ESG, SRI, socially responsible investing trajectory. I mean, for most of my career, I had heard about it when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was working at a bank. I heard about this firm, Ethical Funds, in Canada here. And that was the first time I heard of the concept. And then for most of my career, it was this sort of, these sort of hippie tree huggers over here do this stuff. And, sometimes we get some religious foundations that care about this stuff, but it was just sort of the side thing that wasn't paid a lot of attention to. It was only really in the past, 5, 6, 7 years where we've just seen, a real explosion in the interest. And so what that sort of tells you, I think, is that you can kind of go through this really, unfortunately, long period of time to build momentum, and then you sort of hit a tipping point and it starts to take off. And I hope that that's shorter with impact investing, but I worry that it's longer than maybe most people are expecting.
Yeah, I agree completely. I agree completely. When you look at the curve around social purpose, or even now the backlash against ESGs south of the border, what's your perspectives of just on greenwashing in the ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there certainly is greenwashing that happens, right? Or just irresponsible marketing that is exaggerating the the benefits and actually happening, and that needs to be clamped down on it. I think there's also maybe an equal portion, or if not equal, it's still a significant portion that comes from a misunderstanding. So if we're talking about ESG or SRI, that there's a lot of different ways to practice that. So for some people, it's I don't want any dollars in any industry that I consider harmful or unhelpful. And for others, they say, well, no, I want to have my dollars in the companies that are the leaders in the space that are doing the most to try to enact change. And so if we're talking about, I won't have any money in any oil company versus, hey, I want these oil companies because they are leading the charge on sort of the clean energy revolution and trying to transition their businesses. And I don't think there's a right or wrong to that. But if you go in expecting that ESG means that you won't have any dollars in anything that you consider, then of course you're going to go, oh, it's greenwashing because look, they own these oil companies. Well, it may just be a different philosophy or approach, right? Or shareholder. I can't be an active shareholder if I don't own a position in the company. So we're going to own a position so that we can engage management and get them to hopefully change their practices. So that misunderstanding, I think, is unfortunately responsible for some percentage of the greenwashing claims.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I remember last time we had a great conversation. Your eyes lit up when you spoke about educating families. You work with a lot of high net worth individuals. Like, how does it feel to just educate families and support them in terms of new mindsets and new narratives around how they engage with their wealth or the creation of intergenerational wealth?
Yeah, so very rewarding. I mean, that's the aspect of what we do at Kind Wealth that I most excited about. But it sort of isn't what we necessarily always lead with in our marketing because everyone's at a different stage of their journey, right? If you looked at me 15, 10, even 10 years ago, well, probably 12 years ago now, I just wasn't in the same headspace and wasn't anywhere, you know, close to where I am kind of in my journey now, and I'm still on a journey. And so I don't like to judge people in terms of like, where they're at in that journey. They may have just a bit of an interest or they're open to it. They like the idea of it, but there's still a lot of discomfort. So it's rewarding because you get this opportunity to do this. It can be very frustrating though, because I've have, whatever number of years now, this like probably on this journey for 12 years or so now. And it's taken me a long time to wrap my head around different aspects to really see opportunities and how do I get somebody thinking with that mindset. They need to take their own journey. I can share with them all the lessons and the insights I've gained, but it's not the same thing as you coming to those on your own. So hopefully I can speed their journey up, but the frustrating part is that I am impatient and I want it to happen faster, and I've had to do a lot to really recognize that you can't rush people along that journey. It's that balance, finding the balance between like supporting and encouraging and pushing it, but not rushing it and forcing it on somebody who's not ready to do that yet. And I think that can be very counterproductive if you put somebody in a position they're not ready to because they're kind of forced into it and they have a bad experience. I think we want to avoid those situations because you might get then the backlash to it.
Absolutely. What role do you feel government or the public sector should play in the impact investing ecosystem, if any at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think in spirit, a lot of what the roles that it has been talking about and starting to play. So I think providing funding to create, for those areas of the ecosystem that require it. So, whether that's capacity building for small businesses and that early stage funding that investors don't typically want to step in and fill that role, I think can certainly be very, very helpful. So what we're seeing with the social finance fund, I think the building up the intermediaries, I think all those things are helpful. I think education and awareness is really like, if we're talking about, I think it depends also like who we're talking about. So if we're talking about it entering the zeitgeist and the average or even above average in terms of wealth and accumulation, like, but the person who's not the industry expert, for them to start to become aware about it, excited about it, and become less apprehensive about it, I think it just needs to be, the more awareness and the more that just enters the everyday lexicon, I think that helps reduce people's worries and anxieties about it. It makes it more entrenched, more established, rather than this sort of, well, I've heard about that niche thing that these other people do. It feels more common and more that it's happening more. So I think government education and awareness can be a big part of it as well. But
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. So my last couple of questions are the hardest.
okay.
You run a remarkable platform where you engage leaders in the impact investing space across Turtle Islands, across North America, actually maybe even internationally. I want to know your favorite guest and your favorite interview.
Oh boy, that's a
Yeah,
tough
it's a
one.
hard one. Yeah.
I've really got so many, and that sounds like such a cop out. So can I give you just a few?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is, there's so many that I loved. I would say, so one of the trying to think where to start. So Jed Emerson was a great interview. Jed, we were talking about his book, The Purpose of Capital. It's deeply philosophical. It was a very difficult read. I had to wrestle with a lot of the concepts and stop and slow down. And so getting to talk to Jed about the book, when it was a book that meant a lot to me personally, and that I wrestled with a lot of the concepts, and getting to hear his thoughts on it was a highlight for me. Sir Ronald Cohen, certainly because of his stature in the industry and all that. I had another interview with John Lakomnik, and that was from the financial theory side of things. So like the CFA financial nerd in me got to nerd out with him on modern portfolio theory and the challenges with how that leads us steers us away from being open to and considering sustainable and ESG investing, when his argument is that it's flawed and that we actually need to, it's provable that it's flawed and we need to kind of adapt it. Anyway, so getting to nerd out on financial theory was another highlight for me. But I've loved every episode, and that sounds like such a cliche, but it's absolutely true, because you hear about people. Part of the episodes are just tell me about how you got involved in this space and what your journey was to get to where you are now. And I find that stuff endlessly fascinating, because everybody's journey is so unique.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is my final question before just calls to action or any closing thoughts. When all is said and done, on David O'Leary's tombstone, what do you want to say about
Oh
you? And
man, that's such a
yeah,
great. This is a question we ask our clients, and I still don't have a great answer for it myself. I would overwhelmingly, I would love it to say that I was somebody who certainly was made mistakes, wasn't perfect, but tried their best and wanted to give back to others, and wanted to make a positive impact, and was generous with their time and their expertise and knowledge. And I do try to carve out that time to just like share with others and connect with others. And so if people kind of recognized and thought of me as somebody who was trying their best, that'd be good enough for me. So not necessarily about like the outcomes. So hard to, we talk about outputs versus outcomes in this industry, right? And the outcomes, and in my case, they're so like I'd love it to be as big as possible, but if people even just recognize the outputs, and the effort that I put in, I'd be happy with that.
fair enough, indeed, indeed. So, do you have any closing thoughts or call to actions to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think the more that we can, all of us have a role that we can play. And even if you're just starting out, and not super kind of integrated into this world yet, it's a very welcoming place. It's one of the things I love about it as compared to the traditional investment industry, which is very competitive, and no one's out there looking to help you get off your feet under you. This industry is very different. There's a lot of supportive people. So just get out, get involved. You can figure out what you're good at and find a way to contribute that to the industry, because there's a lot of help that is needed to keep this ball, kind of the momentum going. So I'd say that, for folks who are, business owners, have complex finances and want help with this, Kind Wealth is a resource. There are others out there as well. So if we're not a good fit for you, we can certainly help, or you can find others out there in the industry that are. There's just lots of great people and organizations in this industry. So maybe a little bit generic, but I don't know exactly who the listeners are to the to this right now, so it's hard to give more specific advice than that. But I'd say, yeah, just go out there, and that's kind of what I did, and I found everybody very receptive and welcoming to sharing education and experience.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I really appreciate you, David. And we'll close the way we began this interview by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, David. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.